Watch this one dot. It's on the end of an arm. The arm's spinning on a circle. That circle's riding on another circle and another, all of them turning at their own steady speed. And the tip is drawing a cursive signature, actual handwriting, loops and all, out of nothing but circles going in circles. I want to be clear about how weird this is. Every one of those little wheels is doing the most boring thing a thing can do. Round and round, forever, never speeding up, never changing its mind, dumb as a clock. And somehow the sum of a stack of clocks is your name in cursive. The first time I saw this, I assumed there was a cheat somewhere, that the arms were secretly bending or the speeds were being nudged frame by frame. There's no cheat, fixed speeds, fixed lengths, the whole time. That's the thing I want to take apart with you. Because once you see why it works, you'll see it everywhere. It's how your phone stores music. It's how we cleaned up the very first images from deep space. Same trick, circles on circles. Let's start stupidly simple. One circle, one dot going around it at a constant speed. Keep your eye on just the height of the dot, how far up or down it is from the middle. I'm going to drag that height out sideways as time passes. And there it is, a sine wave. A smooth up and down forever. That's really all a sine wave is, by the way. It's the shadow of something going around a circle. People act like sine is this scary trig thing from high school, but it's honestly just a circle, viewed from the side, unrolled over time. Now the circle has two knobs I can turn. How big it is, that sets how tall the wave gets. We'll call that the amplitude. And how fast the dot spins, that sets how many bumps you get in a given stretch of time. The frequency. Big slow circle, tall lazy wave, tiny fast circle, short buzzy wave. Two knobs, that's it. Remember those two knobs. Everything else today is just stacking a bunch of these, each with its own setting on those two dials. Okay, now the fun part. What if I take two of these and add them together, tip to tip? First circle spins slow, second one smaller and faster, and I attach the second circle to the end of the first arm. The dot at the very end is now following both spins at once. Watch what its height does over time. It's not a clean sine anymore. It's lumpy. It's got the big slow swing from the first circle with little fast wiggles riding on top from the second. I added two boring waves and got something with actual character. Let me add a third, even smaller and faster. The curve gets more detailed, more corners starting to show up. And here's the intuition I want to plant right now. Before any formulas. The slow big circles rough out the overall shape, the general where are we. The fast little circles come in afterward and carve the fine details, the sharp turns, the tiny features. Big circles for the gist, small circles for the polish. Hold on to that. That one idea is the whole subject wearing a trench coat. So here's the claim, and it sounded insane to me the first time. Any repeating wiggle you can draw, no matter how jagged or weird, you can build it out of nothing but these pure sine waves stacked up. Give me a square wave, those brutal flat top signals in electronics. Straight up, flat, straight down, flat. That has hard corners. Sines are the smoothest things in the universe. There's no way smooth curves add up to a sharp corner, right? Watch. One sine gets the rough shape. Add a faster, smaller one. The top flattens a little. Add the next, flatter still. Every wave I stack is smooth, but the sum is marching toward that corner. It never technically gets a perfectly sharp edge with a finite stack. There's always a tiny overshoot near the corner. And honestly, that overshoot has a name and a whole history we'll get to. But you can get as close as you want. Smooth pieces, sharp result. That's the promise. Now let's see why it's actually true and not just a lucky looking demo. Why can you always do it? Here's the piece that made it click for me, and I'll admit it took a few tries. Think about how you'd figure out a recipe by tasting the soup. You want to know, is there garlic in here and how much? Fourier's trick is a way to ask a wave, hey, how much of this exact frequency is inside you? And the way you ask is kind of beautiful. You take your mystery wave, you multiply it point by a pure sine of the frequency you're curious about, and you add up the result over one full cycle. If that frequency really is hiding in the wave, the multiplication lines up, positives with positives, and the total comes out big. If that frequency isn't in there, the whole thing cancels out to zero. The positives and negatives eat each other, so you got a detector. Point it at frequency 1, get an amount. Point it at frequency 2, get an amount. Sweep through every frequency, and you've measured exactly how much of each is in the mix. Those amounts are your circle sizes. That's it. That's the machine. Let me sit on that cancellation thing for one more minute because it's doing all the work and it's easy to skate past. Take two different pure sines, multiply them together, and add up over a full cycle. You get 0. Every single time, as long as the two frequencies are different. Mathematicians call these waves orthogonal, which is a fancy word for they don't interfere with each other's business. It's the same reason perpendicular directions are independent. Moving east doesn't change how far north you are. Each frequency is like its own private direction, its own axis, and there are infinitely many of them, all at right angles to each other. That's the quiet miracle. When you probe for frequency 5, frequencies 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, all of them contribute exactly 0 to your answer. They don't leak. So the amount you measure for frequency 5 is clean. It's only about frequency 5. That's why you can peel a wave apart, one frequency at a time, without them muddying each other. I find that genuinely reassuring. The universe let us have one nice thing. So far everything's been up and down, waves on a graph. But that opening drawing wasn't a wave, it was a shape in the plane, loops and curves going every which way. How do we jump from wiggly lines to actual pictures? Here's the move, and it's slick. A point on a flat drawing has two numbers, how far right and how far up. So track the pen as it draws, and instead of one wave you get two, the right-left position over time, and the up-down position over time. Two waves running at the same time, secretly steering a single pen, and each of those you Fourier apart, just like before, into circles. But there's an even cleaner way to think about it that mathematicians reach for, treating each point of the drawing as a single number in the complex plane, where a rotation is just multiplication. I know, complex numbers, everyone tenses up. Don't. For us all it means is a circle is now the natural unit, a spinning arrow instead of an up-down wave. Same exact idea, better costume for drawing in 2 dimensions. Now let's actually build the drawing machine and I'll narrate what each piece is doing. Every frequency we detected becomes one circle. The amount of that frequency, how strong it was, sets the circle's radius. And there's a third thing hiding I glossed over. Each circle also has a starting angle, where its arm points at time 0. That's called the phase. It decides where in its spin the circle begins. Size, speed, starting angle. 3 settings per circle. We line them up biggest and slowest first, then stack each faster one on the tip of the last, and we let them all rip at once. Watch the very end of the chain. The big circles swing the whole arm around to rough out the shape exactly like I promised, and the little ones on the end scribble in the fine detail. The pen tip traces, and out comes the picture. Add more circles. You capture finer detail, sharper corners, tinier features. Fewer circles, you get a blurry, rounded off cartoon of the shape. It's a dial. Detail costs circles. Here's the frame I want you to screenshot. On the left, just the circles, dozens of them. A ridiculous nested clockwork, all spinning at their fixed speeds, looking like absolute chaos. On the right, the single glowing tip they all add up to, calmly drawing a clean, elegant curve. Look at those two things next to each other. The mess on the left and the grace on the right are the same object. Nobody's steering that pen. There's no plan, no correction, no little motor deciding turn left here. It's just a pile of dumb wheels that happen to have the right sizes and the right starting angles, and the drawing falls out as a side effect. I still find that a little hard to believe, and I've stared at it a lot. Every circle is oblivious. Each one only knows its own boring loop. The picture only exists at the very tip, in the sum, in the one place where all that obliviousness adds up to something that looks like intent. Give it a second. This is the whole video in one image. Time for me to be honest about where this gets ugly, because I hate videos that pretend everything's perfect. Remember that little overshoot near the sharp corner of the square wave? It has a name, the Gibbs phenomenon, and it's stubborn. No matter how many circles you throw at a sharp corner, there's always this stubborn little ringing, a small overshoot that refuses to shrink past a certain size. It gets skinnier, it hugs the corner tighter, but that overshoot height just sits there, around 9%, forever. People discovered this and thought it was a bug in their calculations. It's not. It's real. It's baked into the math. It's what happens when you insist on building a sharp cliff out of perfectly smooth waves. There's always a bit of ringing at the edge, and this isn't just a cute curiosity. If you've ever seen weird ripples next to a hard edge in a compressed image, or heard a strange artifact in low quality audio near a sharp sound, you might be looking at a cousin of this exact thing. The math has a personality, and this is one of its quirks. I kind of love it for that. Let me show you where this actually lives, because it is not a math class party trick. When you save a photo as a JPEG, the computer chops it into little tiles and asks each tile, what frequencies are you made of? Then it does something ruthless. It keeps the big slow circles, the ones carrying the overall look, and it throws away a bunch of the tiny fast ones, the fine detail your eye barely notices. That's the compression. That's literally why a JPEG is smaller than the original, and why if you compress too hard you get those blocky smears. You toss too many circles. Same story with sound. An MP3 breaks a song into frequencies and drops the ones you're least likely to hear. And back in the 60s, when the first spacecraft sent home noisy, streaky pictures, people used these same ideas to figure out which frequencies were the noise and quietly subtract them out. Every time you stream a song or send a photo, a stack of imaginary spinning circles is getting taken apart and put back together millions of times a second, and nobody thinks about it. I think that's wonderful. So we started with a dot drawing a signature, and we ended up inside every photo on your phone. Circles on circles, each one doing the dumbest possible thing, adding up to your name, a square wave, a face, a song. And the core of it was just that cancellation trick. Different frequencies ignore each other, so you can peel any wiggle apart one clean layer at a time. Here's the thread that still bugs me, and I mean it. I go back and forth on this. We only ever drew shapes that close up into a loop, patterns that repeat. That's why circles worked so well. Circles repeat. They come back around, but most things in life don't repeat. A single clap, a word said once and never again, a shape that isn't a loop. What do you do when there's no cycle to hang your circles on? It turns out there's an answer, and it's arguably even more beautiful, but it means letting go of separate circles and imagining the smooth smear of every frequency at once. That's a whole other video. Keep your eye on the blue thing. I'll see you there.